So as usual, this meeting is being recorded, will be posted online. Um, Reminder that the meeting is in accordance with LF and the trans policy as well, openness is a code of conduct. And yeah, let's get to it. Looks like we have a couple of topics listed today. So let's jump into it. The first one we have, okay, thanks, Ben. Ben, do you wanna speak to that?
Yeah, so I went through and, as we had discussed months ago, evaluated the GUAC repo against the open source project security baseline. And there's most of it I was able to do from the LF integration or things I knew. But there were a few open questions I had that I recorded in the issue. Um, just kind of note like just areas of interpretation. And this would be good. This will be good feedback for me to take back to the baseline SIG as well. Um, So I don't, we don't necessarily need to discuss this in the meeting if there are other things to get to, but it'd be good to just sort of get a consensus on, um, if we think, the couple points of documentation, are sufficient to the requirements. The one thing that, well, I think three things, sorry. Um, we don't have, as far as I can tell, a description of how we select, obtain, and track its dependencies anywhere. So that's DO06. We don't have, as far as I know, um, a description of all external software interfaces of the release software assets. And so like that could just be like a list of the services that um, we query, and then also like the APIs we provide. I think some of that's kind of documented, but it's not, easily understood at this point, I think. And then we don't have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure process documented. We do have security information and, send an email to this mailing list. So it may just be like we need to, kind of say, how we want to handle coordinated vulnerability disclosure, and say what kind of timeline and what the process is. um, but those are the things that weren't that I wasn't comfortable just immediately saying yes, we meet those. um,
Mhm.
and so, if folks want to weigh in on that either on Slack or in the issue over the next few days, um, the documentation ones, I think we can pretty quickly wrap up, and then we can, reasonably claim that this meets baselines level 1 and 2. Actually, I think, yeah, there's one thing that we're missing for level 1, and arguably we kind of already have that, and then most of the other stuff is level 2. And I didn't go through the stuff for level 3 at this point just because we're not targeting that yet, and I didn't want to make this too big all at once. Jeff, go ahead.
Um, yeah, I mean, are we providing feedback to the baseline group about this at all? Like, I kind of feel like us not having some of these things maybe is good feedback that,
Yeah.
this is
So,
maybe something that like an established project uh doesn't have, or it doesn't have like a clear example of, like,
yep.
selection of dependencies, things like that. Like, for security policies, like there's a very clear one to copy, or recommendations. For a lot of these things, there are um, code of conduct, contributor
Mhm.
ladders, all that kind of stuff. But some of these things seem like they're kind of newly made up. And does the baseline even have an example of what a good one is? Like, so,
no, we have it.
I don't know if it makes sense to just say like, okay, here's our checklist, let's go meet it ASAP, right? Or, what are our goals here? Or, that we're just kind of being a guinea pig, not necessarily like setting this as something that go and do immediately.
Yeah, so I think it's we definitely do need to provide that kind of feedback to the SIG, and I can take that back as the SIG lead. Some of the some like the dependency selection one is a relatively new thing. Like there are parallels in some of the more, let's say, professional compliance guidelines. Um, that said, I think it is a reasonable thing to want projects to do. That we do have an open issue because we recognize that like we do need to collect some good examples to point people to. The dependency thing in particular is one that there probably isn't a good one, and so like we could, you know, GUAC could kind of set the example of what we think it should look like by, you know, writing it ourselves because like, you know, clearly we don't want to just accept start adding dependencies william-nilliam into the software. Like we have, some sort of internal mental model. Maybe on each person has their own sort of process. But I think getting something documented for the group, especially as we're, expanding to add more projects under this umbrella, makes sense. So this could be an opportunity for us to kind of decide how much effort is reasonable and, create an example that I can then take back to the baseline and add like, all right, here's the example of the dependency selection process. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is, the folks who are working on baseline are also in this call. So I think we can provide some of that back. But what I will say is what Jeff, everything you brought up are things that I had brought back up to folks in that call, because I think Ben as well. I think that there needs to be a little bit more like in addition to what was just discussed here, it might make sense for once, and again, I have to check exactly when the meetings happen because it might be a little too early your time, Jeff, when the SIG happens. But like maybe in the orbit meeting or something like that to collect some of that feedback so they're hearing it from folks who are not just Ben and I. Because I think they say, oh, well, I spoke to some folks and they seem to be okay with it. It's like, you know what, let me bring it straight from the horse's mouth. Like, hey, and some of this stuff is stuff that, just to be clear, Emily Fox has brought up. A bunch of folks inside the Kubernetes SIGs have all brought up is like, hey, some of these things, we don't really have a great answer for some of it. Now, some of the stuff like the dependency policy, over the weekend, I was trying to do some research on C++ SBOMs, and I was trying to see how people do this. And I came across, I'm like, there's the Envoy the Envoy project. I remember being a pretty big C++ project. Let me go and see what maybe they do. And then I was like, oh, they're actually following a good deal of baseline and they have a dependency policy and yada yada. This seems like something that we should maybe share with folks, because this is, I think, again, what I think that they've done is quite comprehensive. I don't think most folks need that, but I found, anyway, as an example of like, is anybody doing that? It turns out Envoy is doing this, but again, they're like ridiculously mature. So I think that there's some cool. I just want to kind of throw that out as something, but I do agree. And in addition to that, one of the things I still would love from the baseline side is I would love like, here's what we saw. Could we bring in the folks from OSTIF and be like, hey, what did you see? Are there things that you think that you see that we're not doing well that are not like in baseline? Because that should probably be either a baseline requirement or something, whatever. And then are there things that we're doing that you're like, I just don't see why people would care? Is that something that we want to make sure that, why is that requirement there in baseline? Yada, yada. But yeah, largely though, I think the thing I would ask you is, Ben, is like, what was your experience with implementing some of this? Like, did you find it like mostly pretty easy except for these things, or mostly pretty hard except for these few simple ones, or a combination?
Yeah, I'd say it was mostly pretty easy, in part because LF insights made it easy to just kind of go through down the list. Another thing, I've not been told this officially, but the rumor swirling around is that at some point the Linux Foundation is going to start requiring baseline, level 1, 2, or 3 for incubating or sandbox incubating and graduated. So, there may be, I don't know how they're going to enforce that mandate when they get around to it. But, it may come up at some point. So I would say for the things that are still outstanding, maybe the decision we come to is we don't have it, but we should. We don't have it, but we think it's a waste of time. We don't have it but we think we want to do it, but it's going to be hard. And then I don't know, something else.
I think a category would be we don't have it, but like we want to see what other people are doing in this space too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, as much as we've tried to, with baseline stuff, make it like very straightforward, I even came up with, some principles that spell out the word FRAM because I couldn't think of an E. But, we want it to be very straightforward and not like be a huge homework project for maintainers. But there is going to be some ambiguity, especially when it comes to like the documentation and stuff. So if there are things in there that we think, yeah, it's worth having this documented, we just don't. I'd be happy to take a first pass at creating that documentation. And then, if everyone kind of agrees, like, yes, this is factually what we want the GUAC project to do, then suddenly that becomes a reference document for everyone else implementing it.
So I had a kind of question on this particular like level, right? Where it's like the project should document a list of code bases and sub projects or additional repositories, right? And like I think when you all provided the framing of this is more like a compliance thing, it kind of makes sense to me. It's like, oh, this is what we do in our organizations. We go to the team and ask them like, which code bases do you have and what controls do they have on them? But I think this is where I get a little bit confused, right? Like, because what is a project? Is a project a GitHub project or is a project a, because I can see there being like, oh yeah, GUAC has all these repos and like in the governance change that we're making that clear, right? Here are all the repos that GUAC has. But then I think there's a confusion where you take any GitHub project as a project, that it becomes complicated, right? Because there isn't a direct relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we've discussed at length and not come up with a great answer on because it is such a variable thing. There's the simple case is there is a GitHub repo per project, which is a discrete thing that ships to the user. The more complicated case is like there's an repo with several different things that get pulled in from other repos and built and bundled together. So like there are many definitions of project, and we have not. It's not clear to us how we should define it for this purpose. But as we were talking about it, like GUAC Visualizer, I would say, is a separate project from GUAC because we manage and ship those things to the user separately.
Yeah, and I
something
see
like SWID core
Yeah.
that gets pulled into GUAC. So like all of a sudden, like is that a distinctly separate thing, or like is it a dependency of GUAC, or is it like part of GUAC? And that's sort of a philosophical question to some level, I think.
And I do see
Mike,
some of this. So I just one more comment and then I'll pass on the mic. I think I do see some of this like being superseded by automation in the future, right? It's like, oh, we all had salsa and all that. Then I could look at consume time and see which source repositories I then use. But yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So that was kind of the reason for my chain sites idea was it doesn't like honestly, I don't think it matters, right? You just need to know if somebody is looking at a thing, they just need to know what am I looking at? What project or projects is this thing? And kind of go from there. And I think just like again, it could be super simple with just like some pointer file. Like I would have no problem if the answer was every repo should either have baseline.yaml with all the stuff in it, or baseline pointer.yaml or whatever, like, or it has a pointer to where that thing lives. And then again, like the thing, and this is the thing that I'm still a little, because there's certain things in baseline about tests and yada yada, where I'm a little worried that it's combining output focused things from repo health things. I think vast majority of stuff is repo health. And if it's repo health, then it totally makes sense to just say at this commit ID, whatever, it's totally fine. Which is going to be different than, like, for example, Salsa, which will be at consumption time, where you're like, hey, this build was built with Salsa. But I think that there is this element of what I would love to have is, let's say there are both a combination of output and, repo health. Then what we should have, similar to Salsa, we should probably have something like a baseline attestation that, hey, when I built this, this was the state of this project's baseline compliance, or at least as stated. Which is going to be different than just sort of the general sort of health stuff. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. And I think that there's easy ways to do this by just saying, having some way of either having the baseline thing or essentially saying, here's a pointer to the baseline thing that is easily discoverable.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I wanted to just give a time check with this. Maybe we can let's figure out maybe next steps, or like what's to ask here. Ben.
yeah, so I would say maybe by the end of this week, like just weigh in on the incomplete ones and say, is this worth doing or not? And the ones that we have a consensus that are worth doing, I'll draft stuff up. And then if you have feedback on the the baseline controls more generally, or the process or something, like feel free to just send that to me. And I can take it back to the SIG, or, you can join the SIG, was it SIG, SIG security baseline in the OpenSSF Slack. Or we do have our bi-weekly meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. So.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. I feel like if we do merge the governance PR, we will meet level 1. It seems like. But yeah. Cool, sounds good. Thanks, Ben. Dan, Trustify donation status.
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything from the LF legal team in the last week or two. So we got at that point that they said they are checking for. There was an issue that Trustify is the registered wordmark in UK, so it's not a blocker, but they want to explore if it will be a problem in the future. If you want to register that. And what would be entice, as you said, like we can rename it again, right? Why not? But they told me they will ping me. Yeah, they will have something last week. So I just don't want to be too pushy, and wanted to check with you guys if anybody have any other information, or should I just follow up with them? I know Ben is getting nervous, as am I, because we need to prepare something for the OpenSSF day, so it'd be good to have things moving by then. And yeah, weeks go by quickly, I know, in these things, but So anybody have any information other than that thread that we are all on? If not, I will maybe, you know, check the status and go from there. And Ben, maybe we can start working on the slides these days. So let's.
Yeah, I have it on my to-do list this week to start outlines. I've got 2 talks at OpenSSF Community Day that are both just abstracts at this point. So
Awesome. The other thing is, so
You're right on schedule, Ben. Don't worry.
yeah. The other thing
Um,
is, so the next point about the meeting times, I don't know. So last week we had a meeting where I asked more people from Trustify to start joining the communities. Unfortunately, most of the folks were out from the GUAC side, and now the most folks from the Trustify is out. So it will get us a little bit to think, right? But one of the things that popped up is that a lot of folks is in EU from the Trustify side, and this term 5 p.m. is a little bit of not ideal for a lot of them. So I know that earlier times is not good for Jeff. So yeah, no need for immediate solutions. Just to think about how we're going to proceed. You know, and maybe think about if we can find a better slot or yeah, somehow to organize everything. Maybe introduce another meeting, or in some working groups in CNCF we had like this idea that just got down. We had rotating meeting times, like 1 week EU friendly, one week NA friendly. You know, I don't know. Just maybe think about it, and maybe we can discuss it at some point as we go forward. And
Yeah, I mean,
last thing.
oh,
Go ahead.
just saying, I'm happy to do an hour earlier. I don't know if that works with everybody else's schedule or what day of the week. Introduces scheduling issue.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's always a mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it immediately. Maybe, you know, wait, because now it's a holiday season, and you know things will get irregular. So maybe, you know, plan something from September to like get more frequent once we are actually, you know, move things and start working more together. So
yeah, I think an hour earlier, like Jeff proposed, works for me as well.
cool.
Maybe let's. Yeah, let me put a post in Slack, and then just get feedback. And like you say, I think September probably is a good time. Give some heads up to folks as well.
And on that last item that I put, just to finish my slot of column here. So the last week, Ruben, a colleague of mine, showed a little bit of presentation about dependency analytic component that we have. So if you get a chance, if you didn't, maybe take a look at it, and at some point we can pick it up, because it's one of the things that we usually didn't talk about much in the context of Trustify and everything, and it will come over. So it's actually IDE plugin for VS Code and IntelliJ that can talk with Trustify in this instance, or and we can make it maybe talk with GUAC in the future. So something that we can also work on together as a. So if you didn't get a chance, maybe give it a watch when you get, and we can maybe schedule it on the agenda for because the attendance were light last week, so maybe we can get all together and see where we are with that and how to move it forward, because we have some things to do to make it more community friendly at this point, because it's much more Red Hat focused at this point than the Trustify in general, right?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put the YouTube video in the meeting notes. Okay. So do you think like in 2 weeks we can make that topic for discussion, or do you want to wait for September when we move the meeting timing?
Yeah, maybe we can. I think we can do it. Yeah, I'll double check with Ruben if he's here and other folks, but let's plan for it
Okay.
and then move it if needed, right?
Let me make a note here. Weeks is, let's see. Awesome. Cool, sounds good. All right. The last item I had was I updated the governance with the feedback. One of the things that we still didn't yet discuss was kind of like process for steering committee. The current proposal is same as what it was last time, with like N-1 committee members vote on the next. But I think last time we discussed that maybe we want something different. So I'm wondering whether like I was thinking about a few things. We could have seats, right, for like each car project, and then like open SSF. Yeah, I don't want to make it too complicated as well. But yeah, maybe we can do like yearly terms. Each car project has at least one seat, and then one voted from community and the other one voted from the previous steering committee. Anyone have thoughts on that? Ben?
As soon as we start having voting from the community, we're going to have to define who gets
Yeah.
a vote in the community. And that can get like, that can be kind of a rough process. Like it's certainly solvable. It just, and then we also need some sort of mechanism to do the voting, but the, sort of defining the boundaries of who does and does not
Yeah.
get a vote, I think is the harder part and might be more complicated than we need at this point in the project's maturity.
So I guess like which parts do we agree with so far? Like, do we say like each core project has at least one member?
Yeah. I'm not sure how we necessarily fill out sort of the rest of it, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I still think about it like the lightest weight one is still like the maintainer version, right? Where it's a group of like, let's say 5 maintainers, and then we fix it as that unless we add more core projects, and each core project has one person that they can put on that committee. And then the committee determines the next round, and then we can say we can do it every year.
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty straightforward. We can always, vote to change if we discover it's unworkable in some way.
So I'll say three steering committee, like 3 members plus one from each core project. So would be 5. Okay. Do you want to put a limit on that? I feel like that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that seems good. Like, I don't think we wouldn't want like 10, just given the size of, how many
Yeah.
people. So, 3 plus, N core projects seems suitable.
And what would be the process for changing this governance?
N minus 1 committee members vote to change it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The only risk there is if somebody just kind of disappears on us.
Oh yeah, I think we have a clause now that says like if you're inactive for 3 months, you get booted out.
Yeah,
So I think we would probably wanna keep that.
something like that. Or we could say, any proposals have to be open for at least a week, and then it's N minus 1 voting, of the people who voted or something. I don't know, or a majority of the votes. We can go a lot of different ways with that, but in practice, I don't see it being a huge concern for us.
Yeah, I mean, what I could say is like in Salsa, one of the things we did kind of change a couple of things around to like, we mostly just said majority of votes. But with this, hey, again, like an escape valve of we can very quickly remove folks from the steering committee or advisory board or whatever you want to call it, if folks are not answering, because we did have a couple of folks who it's like, turns out they're no longer even in this field anymore. You know what I mean? Like they are not at that job and no longer even like doing supply chain stuff at all. So some folks had kind of went off to do other things. So getting folks to either resign or like be like, hey, this person we haven't even been able to get in contact with, a quick like, and I think just making sure that that's written down somewhere is useful, because again, I think the vast majority of folks, it'll be not a big deal. And then in addition to that, the other thing is for any time that there is a dispute, like for example, not that we would run into this, but if we ever ran into a situation where like somebody on the steering committee, if there's 2 people on the steering committee who just can't work together and that there's issues and whatever, there's claims of whatever, it's like it just goes to OpenSSF, right? It goes to the TAC if it's like a technical thing, and if it's a code of conduct thing, it goes to the code of conduct. So there are things in place to kind of essentially manage all that as well. Not that we would have those issues, but just throwing that out there. Ben.
Of course you would. Ben, you're on mute.
I don't remember if it's in there or not, but I was gonna say we probably want to have something where, the steering committee has at least 2 different employers represented at a minimum.
Yeah.
Just to, prevent one company from taking over the project or anything.
Sounds good. Okay. I think this has given me enough to write up something that goes along that line. So I'll write it up and then I'll share the pull request for another round of reviews. Cool. So I think we have a couple action items. One, to review Ben's baseline assessment, give any feedback by end of week. Dan, so the follow on the Trustify with OpenSSF for the trademark / copyright stuff. I will take up a poll on Slack to see what people think about time changes. I'll write up the governance changes, and in 2 weeks we'll have a discussion on the dependency analysis project. So action item for everyone to take a look at last week's GUAC maintenance meeting video, which I posted in the meeting notes for discussion. Cool. All right, I think that's it. That's all that we had. Anything else from folks?
The only thing did anybody want to see Mole?
Hey, you have a shot, 5 minutes. Five minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it takes even less than that. I just wanted to, because again, I haven't gotten to many of the things I wanted to get over to over the weekend.
People are gonna
So
call it mole,
yeah, which I'm also okay with. Mole is pretty fun too. It's like it digs in and so first things first, you initialize a database. Then you ingest some SBOMs. I'm not going to ingest our SBOM database. Our SBOM database has like 40 gigs of SBOMs. It takes a couple of minutes, so I'm not going to do that. But like GUAC data, so I can run ingest on GUAC data and done. And so now if I wanted to get, let's say, all the vulns on, let's say GUAC data, let's say for like Lodash, do I not have anything here? And
that's really fast ingestion.
yeah, so it's just DuckDB, which is like kind of really the fast thing here. Vuln and list. So there is Lodash somewhere. Did I not? I might have messed something up in trying to. Right, and interesting. I think I screwed us something up recently, but anyway, that might be why ingestion is so quick. Is that it's messed up. Well, I'll have something better for next week at least. If I do ingest SBOM DB, it does go pretty quickly. So SBOM DB. So there's a couple of things that I think are just worth like at some point chatting through, which is at least for DuckDB, the thing that's kind of funny about DuckDB is that it's much more efficient as opposed to creating large SBOM, SQL queries. It's much better to take your SBOMs, convert them to Apache Parquet files, which are column store files, and then convert them and then bulk ingest those files. That's like way faster than doing it the other way. So like ingesting like 40 gigs of SBOMs takes about like 4 minutes as opposed to like 4 hours.
Well,
Which is
so
the-
are you passing them? Are you passing them to using the parsers, or is this a different?
So
Speed
it is a bit yeah, so it is a bit different. I mostly copy pasted a bunch of stuff from the parsers. And so it still is parsing, but as opposed to ingesting directly from there, it's converting to Parquet, and then Parquet is going and then DuckDB is ingesting all that data.
Okay.
Because it turns
So-
out
so the-
DuckDB, yeah.
Oh, so like our parsers, do you have to change our parsers in a way that was too slow, or is that like our
No, no, no.
parsers?
So it's not the parsers, it's the ingestion into the database. So it's the SQL.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not the problem. Like the problem, parsing the SBOMs is super fast. The thing that's actually funny though is it's more of an issue with DuckDB, or more of a thing with DuckDB, where DuckDB is hyper optimized for ingesting column store files. So it's way better at ingesting CSVs and Parquet and Avro and some of these other things than it is at ingesting JSON. Now, again, the thing there as well is if I just told it to bulk ingest JSON and you don't give it a parser, you just sort of say, hey, actually, bulk ingest this JSON and pull these fields out of the JSON, that's also really fast.
Hmm. Does it
So,
matter
yeah.
how big your column store files are? I know that's like one of the weird thing with column store.
Yeah, so I did need to increase some memory stuff. So again, everything ingested. Sorry, so now it just generated those 178,000 Parquet files, of which a lot of them are empty, probably because of a bunch of other stuff that's in them. And anyway, so 70,000, SBOMs it's able to ingest. I'll need to actually look at which ones it wasn't able to ingest. Most of the ones it can. I think that just a bunch of them don't really have anything in them. Yep. Anyway, it takes a while here to fully ingest a bunch of this, and then it takes a little while to regenerate the so to refresh the statistics as well as generate the index. Like I think the biggest things, again, the big thing here is like this is for the use case of I don't want to run a database. Like there is no database that runs. It just literally will load everything into memory when you're kind of starting up, and because it uses DuckDB, it's able to like read through the file really, really fast. So it only loads in like certain things like the indexes into memory and yada. It doesn't necessarily need to load the entire thing into memory by any means. So again, yeah. So it was able to ingest 87,000 SBOMs. 3 failed. I think the 3 failed because for whatever reason they're not actually, there is some sort of thing there that are maybe not real SBOMs, or maybe it's for some reason thinking it's anyway. The biggest issue here is that it takes a really long time to optimize the index. By really long time, I mean like it takes 45 seconds. But I think for folks who are like, hey, if you're ingesting 40 gigs of SBOMs a day, you're doing analysis like this. So yeah, including maintenance. So it's an extra 40 seconds to regenerate the thing. And then if I go back and do, I don't know, right, Lodash. Yeah, there we go. And so I wrote also up a mirror for OSV locally. So it essentially just rescans all those pearls locally. And, so I can get stuff like, hey, this Lodash 0.9.2 has these vulnerabilities, yada, yada. And if I just wanted to go and like get information about the vulnerabilities, but also get information about things that are not vulnerable, I could do this, and you can see, hey, Lodash.xorb and whatever else, none of these have known vulnerabilities, but some, hey, this one, Lodash.set, does have a vulnerability. And you can also,
So is your OSV database in Parquet as well, or how are you joining it?
Yeah, it's in DuckDB, yeah.
Oh, so
And so what I'm actually doing, just because I found it to be a little nicer, to be able to separate, is the reason why this takes. So if I, so yeah, if I do something like this, the reason why this took like 2.7 seconds is about like 2.5 seconds is loading DuckDB into memory, and then 0.2 seconds to actually run the query. So if we like, so for example, if I were to run a query against like a very small set of data, it would still pretty much take the same set of time. But if we are to do it against very, very large set, it shouldn't take much longer. So what I'm doing here, and again, I was going to write up a diagram, but I actually got pulled into a call. So one of the things that happened was you're very easily able to just sort of join those two tables. And again, pulling in that table into memory, pull that table to memory, it did take a little bit of time. But you're sort of exchanging that time for like, if somebody were to come in and say, hey, 40 gigs of SBOMs to run the scan for 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds on my laptop, if that's too long, I'm pretty sure there's other problems. You know what I mean? So I think that should be, and again, this is for like some simple use cases. Like, again, this is what this is not going to do is if I ingested one SBOM, that's potentially 45 seconds just to ingest one SBOM.
What's the memory usage for like this data set when you run it?
So when I run it, good question. Here, let me.
But like the entire table has to fit in memory, right? If not, you have to
No,
shard it
no,
up.
it doesn't. No, it doesn't have to. Just the index
Right.
does, and because it uses column, like because DuckDB itself is a column store, it just needs to pull the index into memory, and then it's just a very quick like. There's different things you can have cached in DuckDB and say, hey, I want to keep this in memory, keep that in memory. So it does some smart stuff there. But the other thing that it does, which is really fast, is like if you give it like, I just want the list of all package URLs, it's just a scan across that column of the file. And so it's all contiguous. The bigger challenge is if you say, hey, I want to pull all information about these 10 things, is actually much more painful than it is if you were to say, fetch me all information about one, like fetch me all information about all the package URLs, like fetch me all the package URLs or fetch me all the list of vulnerabilities. Like fetching the entire list of vulnerabilities is like, pretty quick. Cool. But anyway, and so here's just the top set of them. Cool. So anyway, just wanted to show that. I'm still playing around with some more stuff, but I plan to open source it in the next couple of weeks. And, if folks find it interesting, maybe it's something we can kind of add. Okay, I have to hop off. Realized somebody's pinging me. Sorry. Later.
All right. See ya.
Yeah.
Good one.